He was supposed to protect and serve. Instead, Officer Kane beat my 16-year-old daughter in the middle of Patty's Place Diner while the whole town watched and did nothing. That night, I stopped being an ex-FBI agent and became a mother with nothing left to lose. Welcome to Melina's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Drop a comment down below telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single comment, and it helps me to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Maya Sharma, 52 years old, though some mornings the mirror shows me a woman closer to 80. My hair is still black, but only because I refuse to let the gray win. I wear it in the same tight bun I wore when I carried a badge for the Federal Bureau of Investigation for 22 years. People used to say my eyes were kind. They are not kind anymore. They are watchful. They have seen too much. I grew up in a small apartment above my father's tailor shop in Columbus. He taught me how to measure twice and cut once. My mother taught me that love is not soft words. It is staying when everything inside you wants to. Run. They are both gone now. I have no brothers, no sisters, only Lily. Lily came to me when she was 4 days old, wrapped in a yellow blanket, left at a church with a note that said only, "Please give her a better life." I was 36, single, and already tired of burying informants and chasing monsters who wore expensive suits. The moment the social worker placed that tiny girl in my arms, something inside me that had been broken for years clicked back into place. I named her Lily because lilies grow even in mud. I promised her and God and myself that no harm would ever reach her while I was breathing. I left the Bureau officially 5 years ago. Too many closed cases that were never really closed. Too many nights I came home smelling like gunpowder and other people's blood. I thought Rivertown, Ohio would be quiet. Good schools, tree-lined streets, a place where a little girl could ride her bike without looking over her shoulder. I was wrong. These days I work as a private consultant, mostly insurance fraud and background checks for companies too cheap to hire real investigators. It pays the mortgage on our little blue house with the white porch swing. It lets me be home when Lily walks through the door with her backpack and her stories about chemistry class and the boy who smiles at her in the library. I still keep my service pistol cleaned and oiled in a locked box under my bed. I still run 3 miles every morning before sunrise. Even when the arthritis in my knee screams, I still have nightmares about the faces of men I put away and men I could not. But every morning I make Lily pancakes shaped, like hearts. And every night I check the locks twice, and I tell myself that is enough. Until that Tuesday in October, I believed I had built something safe. Inside Patty's Place Diner on Main Street, Rivertown, Ohio, my 16-year-old Lily was closing the nearly empty restaurant when Officer Kane stormed in, already drunk on anger, complaining about cold fries. She walked up to him, polite as always, and said the 8 words that should never cost. A child, her blood. "Sir, I'm going to need to see your badge number. Please." In that exact second, the muted television above the counter flashed a news segment showing Charles Thorne shaking hands with the mayor. Lily glanced up, then back at Kane, and something small but unmistakable passed. Across her face, a flicker of recognition. She didn't even understand herself, but Kane saw it. He understood in that heartbeat that she had just connected him to the man whose secret he was paid to protect. So he grabbed the heavy metal napkin dispenser and brought it down on her head with a sickening sound that still wakes me at night. She fell between the stools, blood pouring into her hair, and he hit her again and again, screaming that she had resisted and reached for his weapon, while the few customers sat frozen, filming on their phones, too afraid to move. By the time I burst through the door, 3 minutes later, my baby was curled on the floor, barely conscious, and Kane stood over her, knuckles raw, looking straight at me and saying, "Evening, Agent Sharma, your daughter resisted an officer. You know how this goes." That was the moment everything began, right there on that cracked linoleum floor in Patty's Place Diner, Rivertown, Ohio. The moment I stopped being an ex-agent and became a mother who would burn the whole town down to bring her child home. The morning after the diner, our little blue house on Maple Crest Lane looked exactly the same as always. White shutters, pumpkin on the porch step, the porch swing creaking softly in the wind. Inside, the smell of cinnamon pancakes floated through, the air like nothing could touch. I needed it to look perfect, because Lily needed to believe the world was still safe enough for pancakes. She came downstairs in my old Ohio State hoodie, sleeves hanging past her hands, the left side of her face swollen purple and yellow. The stitches over her eyebrow made her look even younger than 16 going on 6. She tried to smile when she saw the heart-shaped pancakes waiting on her plate. "Morning, baby," I said, setting orange juice in front of her. "Morning, Mama." Her voice was hoarse from crying all night in. The hospital. We sat at the kitchen table like we had every school mornings for 12 years. Sunlight poured through the lace curtains and painted bright squares on the floor. I poured syrup, cut her pancakes into small pieces the way I did when she was little, and we pretended the world had not cracked open the night before. "You don't have to go to school today," I said softly. "I know." She poked at the pancake, then looked up. "But if I stay home, they win, right?" My brave, foolish girl. I reached across and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, careful not to touch the bruise. "They don't win, Lily, not ever." She nodded, but her lip trembled. We ate in silence for a while. When she went upstairs to shower, I carried the dishes to the sink, then walked straight to my office. I locked the door, moved the rug, lifted the loose floorboard under my desk. The small steel safe was still there, untouched. I took the diner's backup hard drive from my jacket pocket and placed it inside next to my old service weapon. I spun the dial 3 times. There, half hidden under yesterday's mail, was the photograph I had not looked at in 10 years. Me at 37, exhausted and glowing, holding 4-day-old Lily on the day the judge signed the adoption papers. My arm was around a man whose face someone had scratched out with a black marker until only the shape of his shoulder remained. The marker had bled through the paper, leaving angry black veins across baby Lily's yellow blanket. I picked up the photo. My fingers remembered the weight of that day, the smell of the courthouse bathroom where I threw up from nerves, the way the man had kissed Lily's tiny forehead and promised he would always watch over her, even if he could never stay. I had believed him then. I slid the photograph back under the mail just as Lily's footsteps sounded on the stairs. She appeared in the doorway wearing clean jeans and her favorite green sweater, hair still wet. "Ready when you are," she said, trying to sound strong. I smiled the way mothers do when our hearts are breaking. "Let's get you to school, sweetheart." But as we walked to the car, I felt the wallet still in my coat pocket, burning like a coal against my hip. The rain is tapping on the windshield like nervous fingers, and the coffee in my hand has gone cold. I have just dropped Lily at school. She waved from the steps, brave smile, purple bruise blooming under her eye like a storm cloud. I waited until the doors closed behind her before I let myself cry. Then I drove straight to the little brick building behind the courthouse where CJ Rios keeps his office. CJ is the only person in this town I still trust. He used to run forensics for the state police until he asked too many questions and suddenly found himself retired. Now he helps insurance companies and worried mothers like me. He met me at the side door, no receptionist, no cameras. His face was gray with worry. We sat in the back room among towers of old hard drives and the smell of burnt coffee. "Maya," he said before I even took off my coat, "you need to listen. Rivertown is not Columbus. It is not even Ohio. It is a private kingdom. Here, the truth only exists if you have the money to buy it." I placed Kane's wallet on the table between us. The gold Rivertown Development Group logo glinted under the fluorescent light. CJ whistled low. "That is Charles Thorne's personal holding company. He owns half the police pension fund, the new mall, the hospital wing, everything. Kane is not just a bad cop. He is Thorne's dog on a very expensive leash." I told him about the diner video, about the backup drive now hidden under my floorboards, how the hospital lost Lily's initial statement, how the diner's cloud footage mysteriously corrupted overnight. CJ rubbed his temples. They will bury this before lunch. Davies already called it self-defense. The prosecutor owes his house to Thorne. You go official, you lose. I leaned forward. Then we go somewhere else. Money, if they bought the truth. I will buy it back with something they value. More. He looked at me a long moment, then slid a flash drive across the table. Thorne's corporate filings for the last 8 years. Public on the surface, but I know which shell companies feed which accounts. Start here. That night, Lily fell asleep on the couch with her chemistry book open on her chest. I carried her to bed, kissed the bruise that no makeup could hide, and went to my office. Rain still falling, soft and steady, like the house itself was weeping. I locked the door, pulled the curtains, and opened CJ's files on my laptop. Page after page of numbers, transfers, offshore accounts, dates that lined up perfectly with city, contracts and zoning changes, and there, buried on page 47, monthly payments from Rivertown Development, grouped straight into the police pension fund, and one private account labeled simply DD, Sheriff Daniel Davies. My pulse hammered in my ears. I printed everything, 3 copies, old habit, then opened the county tax assessor site with the backdoor CJ taught me years ago. Within 20 minutes, I was inside Charles, Thorne's personal holdings, house on the hill, private jet, vineyard in Napa, and a line that made the air leave my lungs. Annual donation to the same children's home that closed the week Lily was born. I sat back, staring at the screen until the numbers blurred. Charles Thorne. The name Kane had whispered in the parking lot. The name I had heard in nightmares I refused to remember. The name attached to the man whose face I scratched out of that photograph years ago. I looked at the printed pages spread across my desk like a map of hell, and I whispered to the empty room, I'll buy it with something much more expensive. Outside, thunder rolled low over the perfect lawns of Maple Crest Lane. Inside, I started making a list of every account, every shell, every lie. This was no longer about one bad cop in a diner. This was about the man who owns the diner, the hospital, the police, maybe even the air we breathe. The next morning, the news hit like a slap. I was pouring Lily's cereal when the television, in the kitchen, flashed the sheriff's press conference. There stood Daniel Davies, stood in his dress, uniform, flags behind him, voice calm as Sunday preaching. After reviewing all available evidence, he said, eyes steady on the camera, we have determined that Officer Kane acted in justifiable self-defense during an attempted assault by a disorderly juvenile. No charges will be filed. The matter is closed. Lily's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth. Milk dripped onto the tablecloth. I turned the television off so fast the remote cracked against the counter. By 10 o'clock, the second blow landed. A silver Mercedes pulled up outside the courthouse and outstepped Victor Lang, the most expensive defense attorney in 3 states. He wore a $5,000 suit and the same bored smile he used when he got drunk politicians. Out of DUI charges, reporters swarmed him. Officer Kane has retained my services, Lang announced. We expect full exoneration within days. I watched the live feed on my phone while sitting in the school parking lot, waiting for Lily's last class to end. My fingers shook as I dialed the prosecutor's office. The receptionist put me straight through to voicemail. I already knew what the message would say. At 2:30, I drove downtown anyway. Kane sat on the second floor signing papers, laughing with Lang like they were old golf buddies. I stayed across the street behind tinted windows and watched. Lang finished signing the retainer agreement, slid a black credit card across the clerk's desk. The clerk swiped it. I zoomed in with my phone until the embossing was clear. Rivertown Development. Group corporate account. C. Thorne. My breath fogged the glass. Same logo as the wallet still hidden in my glove. Box. Same name I had stared at all night on bank. Transfers and property deeds. I followed them out. Lang shook Kane's hand, then climbed into his Mercedes. Kane lingered on the steps, lighting a cigarette, scanning the street like he owned it. His eyes passed over my car without stopping, but I felt them anyway, cold and knowing. Lang drove away first. Kane stayed, talking on his phone, laughing again. I could not hear the rumble of his voice through my cracked window. Yeah, tell Charles it's handled. No, the mother's quiet for now. She'll fold when the girls' college fund disappears. He ended the call, flicked the cigarette into the gutter, and walked toward the parking garage. I sat there a long time after he left. The courthouse clock struck 3. Children poured out of the elementary school. Across the square, bright backpacks bouncing. Everything looked normal. Everything was poisoned. I drove home through streets I used to love, past the park where Lily learned to ride her bike, past the library where she had her first job, past the diner with its new plywood over the broken window and a handwritten sign that read, "Closed until further notice." When I pulled into our driveway, Mrs. Henderson from next door was watering her roses. She gave me that tight, pitying smile people save for widows and scandal. I smiled back like a good neighbor, walked inside, locked every door, and leaned against the wall until my legs stopped shaking. That corporate card was the thread. Pull it and the whole sweater unravels. Somewhere inside Rivertown Development Group was the reason Kane felt untouchable. Somewhere inside those marble offices was the man who paid for Lang's private jet and Davies's, Lake House and Kane's new truck. And somewhere inside those same files was the reason a 16-year-old girl with my last name had become a problem that needed solving. I kissed Lily's forehead when she came home, told her dinner would be ready soon, and went straight to my office. I opened the folder CJ gave me, spread the papers across the desk like tarot cards. The name Rivertown Development Group appeared on every page over and over like a heartbeat. Someone very powerful was hiding something very ugly, and they were willing to break my daughter's face to keep it buried. I picked up the phone to call CJ again, but the line rang once and went dead. When I tried his cell, it went straight to voicemail. The clock says 2:17 a.m. And the only light is the blue glow of 3 monitors. Lily thinks I'm paying bills. She kissed my cheek 2 hours ago and whispered, "Don't stay up all night, Mama." I smiled like a good mother. Then I locked the door and became something else. I started with the corporate card number I photographed at the courthouse. 10 minutes later, I was inside Rivertown Development Group's vendor portal using an old credential CJ, once borrowed from a careless accountant. From there, it was simple. Follow the money like breadcrumbs. First breadcrumb, quarterly consulting fees of exactly 87. 500 from Rivertown Development Group to something called Rivertown Law Enforcement Benevolent Association, cute name for a slush fund. Second breadcrumb, the same amount, same day, wired from the Benevolent Association into the Police Pension Fund. Third breadcrumb, every fourth payment peeled. Off 12 €, and landed in a personal savings account under the name D. Davies' routing number, matching the sheriff's known bank. I sat back and let the numbers breathe on me. Clean, quiet, automatic for 8 years. Millions of dollars washed through a pension fund nobody ever audits because the pensions are guaranteed. Thorne was not just protecting Kane. He was buying the entire department, one retirement check at a time. I went deeper. Shell company after shell company, all circling back to Charles Thorne's signature on the incorporation papers. And then, tucked inside a folder labeled Legacy Expenses, I found a line that made my throat close. $5. Worry monthly to Children's Home of Hope. Closed. 2009. The same home where Lily spent her first 4 days of life. The same home that burned its records the week I signed the adoption papers. My hands went cold. I printed everything, page after page, whispering out of the printer, like ghosts. I was stapling the stacks when my phone buzzed. An unknown number, local exchange. I answered without speaking. A woman's voice, young, shaking. "Mrs. Sharma." Don't use my name. I work dispatch. Word is Davies is turning in his badge tomorrow. Morning, medical reasons. They're saying he's sick, but he's not. He's scared. Something big is moving tonight. The line went dead. I stared at the phone. then at the stacks of paper covering my desk. Like snow. Davies resigning? After closing the case in record time, hiring Lang, smirking for the cameras? It made no sense. Unless someone higher than Davies decided the sheriff had become a liability. I opened the county employee portal with another, old backdoor. The resignation letter was already uploaded. Timestamped 11:59 p.m., effective immediately. Reason listed, family emergency. Attached was a press release scheduled for 8 a.m., announcing interim Sheriff Ronald Pike, Davies' hand-picked deputy, would take over. A chill crawled up my spine. They were wiping the board clean. New sheriff, same playbook, zero paper trail pointing to Thorne. By tomorrow night, every file with Davies' name would be shredded or lost in transition. I looked at the clock, 2:41 a.m. Lily's soft breathing carried down the hallway. Somewhere out there, Charles Thorne was sleeping under silk sheets in his mansion on the hill, believing he had bought another day. He had not counted on a mother who no longer sleeps. I closed the folders, slid them into a fireproof case, and whispered to the dark, "Run if you want. Sheriff, hide behind your sick leave and your replacement. I already have your fingerprints on the money." The phone rang at 6:03 a.m. Oh, just as the sky outside turned the color of a fresh bruise. Blocked number. I knew who it was before I even picked up. Maya, it's Paul Eckhart. My old partner from the Cleveland field office, now some quiet desk at Maine Justice. His voice was the same, low, careful, the one he used when he was about to ruin someone's day. Paul. I kept my voice flat, walked out to the back porch so Lily would not hear. You're poking a bear that has friends in very high places. Charles Thorne's name came up in a briefing yesterday. The file on your daughter's incident is sealed. From the top. Sealed, Maya. That means Attorney General level. Stand down. I watched a robin land on the fence. It tilted its head at me like it already knew the answer. They beat my child bloody, Paul, on camera. I know. A long breath. And I'm sorry. But Thorne funds half the super PACs in this, state. He golfs with senators. If you keep digging, Lily's scholarship to Northwestern disappears. Her college applications get flagged. Her medical records get leaked. They'll make it look like she has a drug. Problem, Maya, they'll ruin her before Christmas. My fingers tightened around the phone. Here's the offer, he continued. We move Lily to a private school out of state. Full ride, new name if you want. All medical bills, past and future, covered. Therapy, reconstructive surgery, whatever she needs. You delete everything you have on Thorne and walk away. In return, Lily gets to grow up untouched. I closed my eyes. I could see her asleep upstairs, mouth slightly open, bruise blooming across her cheek like spilled ink. I could hear the way she cried in the ambulance. I'm sorry, Mama, I didn't mean to make him mad. Think about your daughter, Paul said softly. Real justice is a fairy tale here. This is the best protection you'll ever get. Silence stretched between us, thick as winter honey. I opened my mouth to answer. Justice or absolute safety, the two words clawing at each other inside my chest like wild animals. But before I could speak, the porch door creaked behind me. Lily stood there in her pajamas, eyes wide, phone in her trembling hand. Mama, she whispered, holding the screen toward me. Someone just sent me a picture. I took the phone. On it was a single photograph. Lily's empty, unmade bed in our house, taken from the hallway. Time-stamped 4 minutes ago. Underneath, 3 words. Choose quickly. Paul was still talking. Maya, are you there? We need your answer now. I looked at my daughter's terrified face, then at the empty bed on the screen, then at the sunrise that suddenly felt cold. Paul, I said, voice steady as stone, tell your friends at the top they just made. This personal. I ended the call. Lily's safety was no longer the only condition. That same afternoon, I sat Lily down at the kitchen table. She still had the bruise shaped like canes, knuckles across her cheek. But her eyes were steady now, angry steady. I need to put something on your phone, I told her. A tiny camera that records only when the screen is on. If any cop pulls you over, If anyone in uniform even looks at you too long, it saves everything to my cloud. You never touch it. You never tell anyone it's there. Can you do that for me?" She swallowed hard, then nodded. "Do it." 10 minutes later, the app was invisible, running silent, feeding straight to a folder only I could open. I kissed her forehead, tasted salt from dried tears, and told her I would be home before midnight. I waited until she was in her room with headphones on, music loud enough to cover the sound of my heart, hammering. Then I changed into black jeans, black hoodie, soft shoes. My old go bag was already in the trunk, laptop, with air gap drive, Faraday pouch, burner phone, and the Glock I swore I would never carry again. One last look around the quiet house. The porch light glowed yellow. The swing moved in the breeze like a warning. Half a block down, under the broken street lamp that has been broken for 2 years, an unmarked gray Crown Victoria eased to the curb and killed its lights. No plates on the front, 2 silhouettes inside. They did not get out. They did not need to. The message was clear. We see you. I stood on the porch a long moment, keys biting into my palm. Every instinct screamed to go back inside, bolt the door, call Paul Eckhart and beg for whatever scraps of protection the government was willing to throw us. But the image of Lily's empty bed on that anonymous text flashed behind my eyes, and I felt something inside me snap into place. Cold, sharp, final. I walked down the steps slowly, deliberately, got into my own car and started the engine. The Crown Vic did not move. I pulled away from the curb, turned the corner, and watched in the rear-view mirror as its headlights came on and followed at exactly 4 car lengths. I drove 3 miles to the all-night grocery, parked under the brightest light, went inside, bought milk we did not need. When I came out, the Crown Vic was gone. I waited another 10 minutes, scanning every shadow, nothing. I drove home the long way, circling the neighborhood twice, street empty, house dark except for the porch light. I let myself in, locked up again, and went straight to my office. I opened the laptop, pulled up the feed from Lily's phone. The camera had caught everything. 2 officers, in an unmarked car, same gray Crown Vic, parked across the street from the high school at dismissal time. One of them zooming a long lens on the front. Doors until Lily walked out. The timestamp was yesterday afternoon, hours before the anonymous text of her empty bed. My blood turned to ice water. They had been watching her long before the diner, long before Kane ever laid a hand on her. I closed the laptop, looked at the go bag still waiting by the door, and made the choice I had been circling for days. No more waiting for them to come to us. Tonight I was going hunting. I slipped the Glock into my waistband, zipped the hoodie, and walked to the front door. Hand on the knob, heart steady now, almost peaceful. I opened the door, and there it was again, silent as a shark. The gray Crown Vic gliding back to the exact. Same spot on the corner, headlights off, engine purring. I met CJ at the abandoned Texaco station on Route 42 at 11:47 p.m. He pulled up first, headlights off. CJ arrived 2 minutes later, driving his old Jeep with the muffler half gone. He killed the engine and walked toward me, carrying a small black hard drive in a plastic evidence bag. "This is everything from Thorne's captive insurance companies," he said, voice low, "reinsurance treaties, loss runs, claims that never happened. If the pension fund money is being laundered, it flows through these shells. You'll find the same Cayman account numbers you already have, plus a few extras." I took the drive. It felt heavier than it should. "Thank you, CJ." "Don't thank me yet." He glanced over my shoulder at the dark road. "They're burning me, Maya. Someone told Davies I pulled the original diner. Cloud metadata. My office was tossed this afternoon. They took my servers, but I had already cloned this." Headlights swept across the pumps. 2 cruisers, no lights, no sirens, just the slow roll of predators who know the prey has nowhere to run. "Go," CJ said. "Back door of the garage, through the cornfield. I'll keep them talking." I started to argue. He put a hand on my arm, hard. "Protect the girl, Maya. That's the only thing that matters now." I ran. I heard him raise his voice as I disappeared. Between the rusted pumps, something about a wrong address and police, brutality lawsuits. then the first slap of fist on flesh, then the second. I forced myself not to look back. I cut through the cornfield, my shoes soaked, my heart racing, and reached my car parked on the fire road. By the time I hit the main road, the cruisers were gone and the Texaco parking. Lot was empty except for CJ, his Jeep with the driver's side door still open, and the key in the ignition. My phone vibrated. Unknown number, a video file. I played the video with the sound off. CJ was kneeling on the gravel, 3 uniforms around him, Kane's boot pressing down on his neck. Blood was already leaking from CJ. His mouth, but his eyes found the camera, his gaze fierce. He managed to lift his head just enough to scream straight at whoever was filming. That bastard doesn't want the video out for another reason. It's not about corruption, it's... The boot came down, the screen went black. The problem wasn't corruption. I had been chasing money, believing Thorne shielded the dirty cops to protect his empire. But CJ, his words shattered that assumption. If the diner video was dangerous to Thorne for a reason that had nothing to do with bribes or the pension fund, then all my assumptions were wrong. And whatever that reason was, it was big enough to make a man like Charles, Thorne willing to destroy a 16-year-old girl to keep it buried. I looked at the hard drive on my lap, then at the empty Texaco, glowing under the moon like a crime scene. Somewhere in those insurance files lay the missing piece, the real secret Thorne would kill to protect. And now CJ was paying the price for giving it to me. I started the car, wiped my face with my sleeve, and drove home through back roads, checking the mirror every 10 seconds. I waited until the sheriff's office went dark at 2:14 a.m. The building is old brick, one security camera over the back door that has been broken since the last budget cut. Inside took 47 seconds. Lockpick, swipe card cloned from the cleaning crew. Alarm code still 0 because Davies thinks no one would dare. I plugged the thumb drive into his desktop, found the expected bottle of bourbon, the expected burner phone, the expected envelope with 20,000 in hundreds. I photographed everything. The Trojan pinged, hidden partition, I opened it. First folder, scanned loan documents, handwritten notes, Thorne's signature on promissory notes worth millions, all marked personal DD. Davies had been borrowing from Thorne for years. Interest compounding, collateral listed as future favors. One note, dated 3 weeks ago, carried a single line in red ink. Payment due. Upon request, no exceptions. I copied it all. Second folder, deleted surveillance footage. Hundreds of files with dates going back 4 years. I searched for the diner timestamp first. Found nothing. The official copy had been scrubbed clean, but the Trojan kept digging. It pulled a corrupted MP4 from the recycle bin, 2 gigabytes. I started recovery. While the progress bar crawled, I kept working. Found another folder inside were PDFs of policies written on buildings that burned down. The same month, the claims paid out. Classic arson for profit. Millions funneled through the captive insurance. Companies CJ had died for. 72% restored. I opened the file. Grainy night vision. Rivertown Community Park, late summer. The swings moved in the wind. A little girl in a green dress pushed a doll. Stroller along the path, my little girl. Lily at 12 years old, hair in 2 braids, laughing at something off camera. The timestamp read August 15th last year. Camera zoomed. From the tree line, a man in a dark overcoat watched her. Expensive coat, silver hair catching the streetlight. He stood perfectly still for 6 full minutes. Hands in pockets, never moving closer, never turning away. Charles Thorne. He raised binoculars once, adjusted focus, then lowered them. The expression on his face was not anger, grief, hunger, all at once. He looked like a man staring at something he lost and could never reclaim. My stomach turned to stone. The file ended with Thorne walking back to a black SUV, driver holding the door. License plate visible. I froze the frame, cropped, saved. This was not surveillance for corruption purposes. This was a father watching the daughter he had never acknowledged month after month, year after year from the shadows. CJ. His broken words echoed in my skull. That bastard. Doesn't want the video out for another reason. Not money, not bribes. Blood. I sat back in Davies's leather chair, the same chair where he had signed away my daughter's justice, and felt the floor drop out from under me. Charles Thorne had been watching Lily since she was small, and whatever reason drove him to stand in the dark parks with binoculars in his hands. It was personal, raw, and dangerous enough to make him order a 16-year-old girl beaten half to death just to keep one diner video from ever seeing daylight. I drove up the long, curving driveway at dusk, past gates that opened before I even slowed down. The Thorne mansion sat on the hill like a white fortress, every light burning. A single man waited on the front steps, no security visible. Charles Thorne himself, silver hair perfect, hands in the pockets of a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars. I stepped out with a thick folder under my arm and the Glock tucked in my waistband. He raised an eyebrow at the bulge but said, "Nothing. Agent Sharma," he greeted. Voice smooth as old whiskey. "Or do you prefer Maya now that we're family?" I stopped 3 feet away, close enough to smell his cologne, far enough to draw if I had to. "Lily is bleeding because of you," I said. "Start talking." He smiled without warmth and gestured toward the open front door. "Please, inside. The wind is cold." He poured 2 glasses of something amber, offered me one. I ignored it. "You're very good," he said. "Better than I expected. The park footage was supposed to be erased years ago." "Answer the question. Why have Kane beat my daughter?" He set the glass down, folded his hands. "Because she is my daughter, Maya, biologically. I've known since the day she was born." The words hit like a fist to the sternum. I had prepared for almost anything, but not this. He continued, calm, almost gentle. 16 years ago, I had a brief affair with a woman named Elena Reyes. She was 22, beautiful, terrified. When she told me she was pregnant, I offered money, marriage, anything. She refused everything. 3 days after Lily was born, Elena vanished. Left the baby at a church with a note that said, "Give her a life I can't." I found my voice. "You could have come forward. You had the resources." I tried. His eyes flicked to the fire. Elena had already signed the adoption papers, using my name without permission, forged my consent. By the time my lawyers untangled it, you had taken Lily home. The judge sealed the file. I was told any attempt to reopen it would brand me a predator trying to steal a child from a heroic single mother, an FBI agent no less. He gave a bitter smile. So I watched from a distance. Private schools paid anonymously. Medical bills that disappeared. I told myself it was enough. I opened the folder, let the park stills and the loan documents spill across his antique desk. "You bought an entire police department to keep, watching her. You had a 16-year-old beaten to protect. Your secret." "I had her beaten to protect her life," he corrected softly. "The diner video shows Kane's face clearly. If it surfaces, certain people will realize who Lily really is. And those people do not forgive loose ends." I stared at him. "Who?" He hesitated, the first crack in the mask. "Elena didn't just run from me, Maya. She ran because she had stolen something far more dangerous than my name. Something that could send very powerful men to prison for the rest of their lives. She hid it, told no one where, and disappeared. I always believed she would come back for Lily. One day, lead them to it, so I waited and watched." He leaned forward, eyes suddenly ancient. "But Elena died 2 years ago, overdose. And the people she stole from finally traced the child. They want what she took. The only way I can keep Lily breathing is to keep her invisible, ordinary, unconnected to me." He spread his hands. "So yes, I buried the video. I buried the case. I would burn this entire town to the ground before I let them touch her. The man standing in front of me, the man whose blood ran in my daughter's veins, was both her greatest danger and her only shield. The fire in Charles Thorne's study had settled into a low Maya. I'm going to make this very simple for you, because I have run out of patience and Lily has run out of time," he said, his voice smooth and deliberate, the kind of voice that closes boardrooms and ends lives without ever rising above a murmur. "Tomorrow morning at 9, you will walk to the courthouse steps with whatever reporters are still camped there, and you will read the statement my attorney has prepared. You will say that after careful review of all the facts, you now believe Officer Kane acted in justifiable self-defense, that your daughter's injuries were tragic but unavoidable, and that the family wishes to put this unfortunate incident behind us. In exchange, Lily walks out of that hospital tomorrow afternoon with a clean bill of health, a trust fund large enough that she will never need to worry about tuition or rent or anything else for the rest of her life, and my personal guarantee that no harm will ever come to her again. I stood across from him, the folder of his dirty money still open between us like an accusation. You are asking me to stand in front of the world and call my daughter a liar, I answered, my voice trembling despite every effort to keep it steady, to tell the cameras that the blood in her hair and the stitches across her scalp were somehow her own fault, all so you can keep your secrets buried. Thorne's eyes never left mine, cold and ancient and unbearably tired. I am asking you to choose which version of your daughter you want to keep breathing, he replied, sliding a thick cream envelope across the desk until it touched my fingertips. Inside, you will find the discharge papers, already signed by the hospital administrator, the trust documents already notarized, and the scholarship letter already accepted by Northwestern. All that is missing is your signature on the statement and your appearance tomorrow. After that, Lily's future is untouched, untarnished, and most importantly, alive. He continued, softer now, almost gentle. I know what it is to lose a child, Maya. I have lived with that knowledge every day since. Elena walked away. Do not make me live with it twice. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the crackle of dying logs, while I stood there drowning in the choice he had laid at my feet, justice or my daughter's heartbeat. I finally managed to speak, though my throat felt lined with broken glass. I need the night. I need to sit with her, to look at her face while she sleeps, before I decide whether to sell her truth for her tomorrows. Thorne inclined his head. You have until 8:30 tomorrow morning. After that, the offer expires, and the consequences begin. I turned to leave, the door already reaching for my keys, already calculating how fast I could drive to the hospital, when my phone vibrated once against my hip. I pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and felt every drop of blood drain from my body. A single photograph, taken minutes ago, Lily's hospital bed, sheets twisted as though someone had been dragged from them, the heart monitor silent and dark, the IV bag still swaying slightly from whatever struggle had just ended. Below the image, 3 words in plain white text. We have her. I looked up at Thorne, but he was staring at his own phone, face suddenly pale, fingers frozen above the screen, because whatever message he had just received had not come from him. The morning they made me sell my soul was cold and bright. The kind of October day that pretends everything is still beautiful while the world rots. Underneath, I stood on the courthouse steps in the Navy suit I once wore for congressional testimony, and I read every word they had written for me as though each syllable were a stone I swallowed. I have spent the last several days reviewing all available evidence with my family, I said into the cluster of microphones, and after long and painful reflection, I have come to believe that the Rivertown Police Department, and specifically Officer Kane, acted to the best of their ability in a rapidly escalating situation that tragically resulted in my daughter's injuries. We accept the findings of the official investigation and ask only for privacy as Lily continues to heal. Behind me, Sheriff Davies rested one hand on Kane's shoulder in a gesture that looked almost fatherly, both of them smiling the small, satisfied smiles of men who had just been handed absolution on live television. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions I did not answer. I simply turned and walked away. I drove home. I went straight to my office, knelt on the rug, moved the loose floorboard, and opened the small steel safe where I had hidden the diner backup drive. The printed financial records, everything that could still burn them all down. The safe was empty. Not just empty, scrubbed. Someone had taken a magnet to the hard drive. The metal was warm, as though the erasure had finished only minutes before I arrived. The paper copies were gone, replaced by a single white card that read, in neat block letters, "Thank you for your cooperation." I sat back on my heels, the room tilting, and for the first time since the night in the diner, I felt something beyond rage, something hollow and final. I closed the safe, replaced the floorboard, and walked to my desk because there was nowhere else to go. The computer screen woke at my touch, and before I could even enter the password, a video file began playing automatically. Full screen, no controls. Lily sat on a metal chair in a windowless room, wrists zip-tied to the arms, face bruised but defiant, eyes red from crying yet still burning with fury. The camera was steady, professional. And then the person holding it stepped into frame, turning the lens toward his own face so there could be no mistake. Sheriff Daniel Davies smiled the same smile he had worn on the courthouse steps only hours earlier. "Hello, Maya," he said, voice warm and conversational, the way a man speaks when he knows he has already won. "By now you've done your little performance and discovered your insurance policies are gone. Good, because the girl and I are going to have a long talk about where her real mother hid certain documents that belong to me. And if she cooperates quickly, maybe she keeps all her fingers." He reached forward and the screen went black. I stared at the blank monitor for a long time, the reflection of my own empty eyes staring back, while the truth settled over me like a shroud. Charles Thorne had not taken her. Davies had. The man Thorne thought was his loyal dog had slipped the leash, and he was coming for everything Thorne valued, most using the only leverage that could destroy them. Both my daughter. I did not move for a long time after Davies's face vanished from the screen. The house was so quiet I could hear the grandfather clock in the hallway counting each second of my failure, and every tick felt like another drop of Lily's blood hitting the floor somewhere I could not reach. Eventually I stood, walked to the kitchen on legs that did not feel like mine, and found the envelope the hospital had delivered that morning, the one containing CJ, his personal effects after they finally admitted him under guard. Inside were his wallet, his broken watch, and a folded square of paper that had not been there when the night he was beaten. I opened my phone with trembling fingers. It was a message from CJ. He explained that Kane was pulled by Thorne, but Davies was the one pulling Kane. Thorne only wanted Lily silent, but Davies wanted ransom, something Elena had stolen that was worth more than money. He thought Lily knew where it was, but she didn't. CJ warned me that Davies would beat her to try and find out, and advised me to use the dog to find the master. He apologized for not being able to do more. The words arranged themselves into a map I had been too blind to see. Thorne was no longer the puppet master. Davies had been playing both sides, borrowing millions from Thorne while quietly building his own exit strategy, and now he had taken the one thing Thorne valued. More than his empire, his daughter. I understood with a burning clarity that Charles Thorne and I suddenly wanted the exact same thing, Lily alive and unharmed. The enemy of my enemy had just become the only ally I had left. I waited in the shadow of the high school. Football stands, my heart steady. At 11:47 p.m., Kane's cruiser rolled slowly past, its headlights off. When he stopped at a red light, I stepped into the road, directly into the headlights, empty-handed and raised. He rolled down his window, the familiar sneer appearing on his face. "Little late for a walk, Mrs. Sharma." "I know where Davies has her," I said, voice calm, almost gentle. "And I know you didn't sign up to be part of the kidnapping. Help me get her back, and I forget every punch you ever threw." He stared at me for a long moment, fingers drumming the steering wheel, calculating. "You're crazy if you think I'm turning on the sheriff. You're dead if you don't," I answered, because when Thorne finds out who really took his daughter, he won't send lawyers. He'll send people who make you disappear. Help me and you live. The light turned green. No one moved. Finally, Kane exhaled through his teeth. "Get in." He pulled away from the curb, eyes on the rearview mirror. "Davies thinks he's meeting me at the old paper. Mill in 20 minutes to hand off the girl for the ransom drop, he said, voice low. He doesn't know I recorded the call. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the fear he was trying to hide. Then we're going to that meeting, I said. But we're going to be early. Kane's hands tightened on the wheel. You're insane. No, I said softly, checking the magazine in my Glock. I'm a mother whose child is in the hands of a monster, and you are going to drive me straight to him. He swallowed hard, nodded once, and turned left toward the river road. Kane kept the cruiser at exactly 55, headlights off, following the river road that wound through the black fields like a vein. Thorne picked up on the first ring. If you are calling to threaten me, Maya, save your breath, he began, voice brittle with exhaustion and something that sounded almost like fear. Davies has gone rogue. He took Lily from the hospital himself. My people are tearing the county apart, but he is smarter than I gave him credit for. I know, I answered, keeping my eyes on the dark road ahead. And I know where he is going. But I need something from you first, something only you can give me. Silence stretched, then a low, incredulous laugh. You want a bargain now? I want Davies destroyed. I said, you want your daughter back alive. So here's the deal. You send me every ledger, every wire transfer, every offshore account that proves Davies has been skimming from you for the last 8 years. Everything that will put him away for life once the feds finally look. In exchange, the copies I have of your own tax fraud disappear forever. We both get what we want, and Lily comes home. Another silence, longer this time, and I could almost hear the calculations racing behind his eyes. You would trust me to keep my word? He asked. Finally, I would trust you to love her more than you hate. Me, I replied. Send the files, now. 37 seconds later, my phone vibrated. An encrypted zip, I forwarded it to the burners, kept for emergencies, then deleted the original. It's done, I said. Thorne's voice dropped to something raw. Bring her back to me, Maya, please. I ended the call without promising anything. Kane glanced sideways. You really think he'll let you walk after this? He will if Lily walks first, I answered, watching the abandoned riverside paper mill rise. Out of the darkness ahead, windows broken, smokestacks like broken teeth against the stars. Davies told me to come alone, Kane muttered. Said he'd trade the girl for a duffel with $5 million and safe passage out of the county. I was supposed to be his ride. Then you are going to be exactly on time, I said, checking my watch. But I will be 30 seconds behind you. You keep him talking. I get Lily. When it's over, you disappear or you don't. That part is up to you. Kane keyed in the code and the door opened. Davies' silhouette filled it, a gun in his hand. Behind him was Lily, small, wrists bound, mouth taped but eyes wide and alive. My heart started beating again. Davies waved Kane inside. The door began to close. I ran, silent, low, Glock raised. My phone buzzed again. It was a small file from Thorne labeled Listen. I crouched behind a rusty conveyor belt, pressed play, and Charles Thorne's whispered, urgent voice filled my earpiece. Thorne said that if I was hearing this, it meant Davies had taken Lily to the old cold. Storage room beneath the main warehouse floor, entrance behind the boiler, code 0913. I closed my eyes for a second, gratitude and hatred colliding, and then I moved, until I reached the heavy steel door hidden behind the ancient boiler and punched the numbers, with fingers that barely trembled anymore, because every ounce of fear had been burned away by the single thought that Lily was on the other side. The door sighed open on cold, damp air, and there she was, my brave, bruised girl bound to a metal chair beneath one. Naked bulb, eyes wide with terror and fury, while Sheriff Davies stood behind her with his service pistol pressed hard against her temple, smiling that same courthouse smile that now looked like something carved from rot. Well now, Maya, he drawled, voice lazy and poisonous. You always did have to make everything difficult, didn't you? I raised my Glock in a smooth, practiced motion and centered the sights on the bridge of his nose. Let her go, Daniel. It's finished. He laughed, low and ugly. Nothing's finished until I'm on a beach, drinking something that costs more than your house. And the girl tells me where her real mother hid my retirement fund. That was when Kane stepped through the doorway. Behind him, duffel bag in one hand, the other hovering near his holster, and froze. Because the scene in front of him was not the clean exchange he had been promised. "Sheriff?" Kane's voice cracked like a boy's. "You said we were just scaring them. You said nobody gets hurt." Davies swung the pistol toward Kane without taking his other arm from around Lily's throat. "Plans change, son. Drop the bag and get over here, or I start with her kneecap." Kane's eyes flicked to Lily's tear-streaked face, to the terror she could not hide, and something inside him that had been bent for years finally snapped straight. He let the duffel fall, drew his own weapon in one clean motion, and leveled it at Davies. "Let the girl go!" Davies stared, stunned, then laughed again. "You stupid—" I fired once. The bullet took him high in the right shoulder, spinning him sideways, the pistol clattering across the concrete. Kane lunged, driving Davies to the ground, knee in his back, cuffs out before the sheriff could even scream. I was already at Lily's side, slicing the zip ties, peeling the tape from her mouth, pulling her into my arms so tightly I felt her, heartbeat hammer against my own. "Mama," she sobbed. And that single word undid every knot of terror I had carried for weeks. Red and blue lights exploded through every broken window as the FBI breach teams poured in, shouting commands, weapons raised. The raid Thorne himself had triggered with the files he sent me now crashing down like righteous thunder. Davies was dragged away, cursing, blood soaking his uniform. Kane stood quietly while agents cuffed him too, meeting my eyes for one long moment. A nod that carried everything he could not say. Hours later, after statements and medics and the long, slow drive out of Rivertown forever, we learned that Charles Thorne had been arrested on the tarmac, boarding his jet with 2 suitcases and a one-way ticket. The evidence he had handed me in exchange for his daughter's life had become the rope that hanged him. 6 months after that, Lily and I stood together in front of a small brick building in a new city, watching workers hang the sign we had chosen. Together, Sharma Reyes Center for Survivors of Police Violence. I turned down the Bureau's offer of reinstatement with a single handwritten page that said only, "My daughter needs me more than my country does now." We still wake some nights reaching for each other, across the bed, but we wake in the same room, breathing the same air, and that is enough. Charles Thorne will spend the rest of his life in federal prison. Davies and Kane are cellmates in different facilities, their trials still making headlines. And every morning when Lily makes coffee too, strong and burns the toast the way she always has, I look at her and know that every lie I told, every oath I broke, every piece of my soul I traded was worth it. Because she is here and she is whole and she is mine in every way that matters. The monsters are in cages now. And we, my darling, we are free. The story is over, but my heart is still throbbing. I need to hear your thoughts. What touched you the most? What moment moved you the deepest? What detail ignited the fighting spirit in you? Please share your thoughts in the comment section below and let me know which city and country you are watching from. I read every comment. Your presence makes me feel less alone. Don't leave yet. On screen now are 2 new stories I've prepared with the same passion. Choose one and stay with me longer. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories that only we can truly understand together. Thank you for going through these painful memories with me tonight. You are not just a viewer, you are family. I will see you in the comments and in the next story. Good night and dream of justice.